And just so you don't think I'm picking on Italian politicians, it's the same thing in Panama, Costa Rica, Australia, all these places. It's like these are working in unison, and that's why good people need to band together, work together for good. We need to push good out and crowd out the bad. This is the cancer cells and the good cells. Remember that analogy in the previous video? The good cells and the bad cells. All right. Hey everybody, pre or post CV, travel, retire earlier, abroad, thinking about our experiences. And I'm thinking, right, you look at post CV, we won't say the word, and it's like things start clicking in a certain way. For example, when we were in Panama, we were buying garlic. We buy garlic at the supermarket, and I couldn't believe how cheap it was. I mean, the real estate in Panama is through the roof, right? But, and of course, depends on where you're coming from, right? But it's through the roof for normal folks. And so you go to the store, and then the garlic is not just the complete opposite. The garlic cheaper than dirt cheap. And so, for example, you know, you go to places like Ecuador and you see the prices there. Okay, so you say, all right, well, it costs less than being in the States. But then you get to Panama, and it is exclusive to some items because the food in Panama is also through the roof. But talking about this point we're making post-CV, pre-CV, we were there and we would get like a big, long, what do you call it, thing of 8 garlic clusters for 25 cents for the whole thing. You'd think it would be, oh, 25 cents each. Oh, that's cheap. No, it was for 8 of them. Yeah, that's, how can 8 garlic clusters?
They're called bulbs.
Bulbs, thank you. How can 8 garlic bulbs be 25 cents for all 8, or 35 cents, I don't remember exactly, somewhere in there in the pennies, for 8. And it's like they had to come all the way from a different continent, you know, from China. All right, I'm abroad, there's something askew, but it's because I'm abroad. But then you think, wait a minute, this is too skewed. It's like, okay, what's wrong with it? You know, what's wrong with it? And then you look at post-CV and you think, oh, post-CV, certain things start coming to light. Like some of these countries, like Panama's one of them, and Ecuador, have taken huge loans from China. And so now I didn't go scrutinize the documentation or anything, but it seems to me there's obviously some kind of a sweetheart deal going on here. You know, for lack of better terminology, some kind of a sweetheart deal going on, because that's just too good to be true. You cannot produce 8 bulbs of garlic and ship them all the way from China, and they cost 4 cents per bulb. You know, I mean, that they must have done it on a 3D printer or something. Yeah, you know, something is wrong here, you know. All right, and so, but the rest of the food is ridiculously high. So, but it doesn't come from China. See, the rest of the food doesn't come from China, and it's something that I was talking about when I was in Panama. Excuse me, these avocados are from Panama. Why are they that much? It's interesting that the avocados are cheaper in Italy than in Panama, which is a year-round tropical country. This is a tropical country. Well, I'll tell you why. Because the guy in a 2,000 a month condo is who's coming down here buying it. That's why it costs that much. You know, the avocado should be 30 cents, all things considered. 50 cents maybe. And by the way, they can be if you're out in the country and dealing with locals, but not from your, you know, your expensive real estate, Airbnb and all that, you know. So these are the one of the thoughts that is pre and post that comes together like a little puzzle. That's like Legos, and it's like snaps together. It's like, oh, you know. I like a city that's got a lot of walkways like this. It makes it so much more enjoyable. It's nice and wide. And actually, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Portland, Oregon, where they've got all those bike trails around the city. It's kind of like that. It's well, it doesn't remind me of Portland, Oregon of right now, the Portland of right now. Back in our day, the Portland was more normal, but nowadays, but as far as the bike trails, that's what I'm talking about. I know I probably shouldn't be comparing to Portland because the place is not recognizable. It's nothing like it was 40 years ago. Yeah. It's funny because at that time, if you try to project forward 40 years, it's like, you don't think about that. That's so far away. That's like, man, that's like space age away. That's not even gonna come. But here we are. Here we are, but we're in Poland. Yeah. And another thing that I want to talk about, if you'll let me. So you might be thinking, yeah, but Frank, the sweetheart deals were always there. They were always sweetheart deals. What's the pre and post thing? Well, the pre and post thing is that somebody was saying how some of the most desirable places from the point of view of just a relaxed attitude towards their people and maybe even foreigners, and just a place to go to feel more freedom. Some of these places that pre-CV were at the top of the list now have sunk to the bottom of the list because they have come down super hard on everybody, their own people and even foreigners. So things have changed drastically. But it's a sad thing that we are seeing. Hopefully things will change, but usually things don't change until people cause a change. Speaking of which, I was relieved to finally see the Australians finally start protesting. I was hearing of just the draconian lockdown, and I'm thinking, what is wrong with Australia? You'd think it'd be some backwater, podunk, who knows, Timbuktu place, but oh my gosh, what is wrong with those people that they're putting up with that? You know, and finally they came out of the woodwork, and it wasn't a whole bunch of them, but at least it's a start. And finally they say, enough's enough. We've had enough. This is ridiculous, because, you know, until people, you know, start saying enough's enough, it doesn't seem like the other side is going to be the one to say enough. Okay, it's over. It's like my friend saying, you know, well, you know, the Spanish flu, that lasted 2 years and we're only 6 months into it. But that's just a false sense of security, because a false sense of a trajectory, because I'm not seeing the parallel. I mean, there's a similarity here. I'm seeing something worse here. I'm seeing a different character to these, you know, never mind that if somebody doesn't have the background picture, the picture of what's actually happening in the background, just to have an open, observant eye to see that this is the way it's handled from the ones imposing these lockdowns. There's definitely something more sinister in the way that it's being put out, and it's being put out with a veneer of it's for your own good. But there's so much whipping going on, whipping of the people, that it's just pretty clear to me anyway, and it should be clear, you know, that you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. And that's the thing that these other places, very few minority places, have done, and then they get drastically demonized for, including some of the states in the US that they get drastically demonized for, and then you get the demonization. Speaking of which, they just won't let off of Ecuador. You know, it's like the fake news. You know who they are. We won't mention any names. You know who they are, and if you don't, you got some work to do. But the fake news just came out just a few days ago with this article. What was the word they used? The word, I wish I could remember the word, Angie, but it was like,
I'm not sure what article you're talking about.
Well, it was saying that, you know, just these deaths, all these deaths, you know, in Ecuador, all these deaths, you know, bodies, people, you know, and yet there is more to it, which I'll talk about in a different video. But they just won't let Ecuador be. there's a different side here. You can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar, and it's like in Naples, right? This 14-year-old kid standing in front of his door on his house, and he gets some gorilla-sized cop. I mean, compared to the kid, this was like the difference between, well, okay, tempted to exaggerate, but you know, it's like the difference between a gorilla and a chimpanzee. You know, this cop was that much bigger, and the 14-year-old kid, it's not like he had, it's not like he was menacing or anything. Didn't have any weapons, didn't have tattoos, he wasn't drunk. He was just standing there, but hey, he didn't have a mask on, and he got pounced on by this gorilla-sized cop that acted like he was in a wrestling ring. You know, the kid didn't pose any threat whatsoever, and it just was, I was ashamed that was Italy. Because people haven't asked yet. I said, why did you leave Italy? Well, I got stories to tell you, believe me. Different video, okay? Italy has always been referred the place where the politicians were a little off. Well, sure, that's a nice way to put it when you want to be, you know, affectionate about it, right? And just so you don't think I'm picking on Italian politicians, it's the same thing in Panama, Costa Rica, Australia, all these places. It's like these are working in unison, and that's why good people need to band together, work together for good. We need to push good out and crowd out the bad. This is the cancer cells and the good cells. Remember that analogy in the previous video? The good cells and the bad cells. All right, so enough said. Thank you for coming to our channel, and have a nice day. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are, and we'll do our best to have a conversation with you. Bye-bye.